Hello friends, and welcome back to this course titled as British Poetry. We are discussing Alexander Pope's Rape of the Lock. In this class, we will look at various aspects of this poem, Rape of the Lock, including mock epic or what is heroic couplet and few more things. But before moving to the lecture, the content of the lecture, let us first talk about the lecture outcome. What are you going to learn through this 30 minutes lecture? You would be able to analyze literary devices like mock epic, social satire, and heroic couplet in reference to the prescribed text. So, we will be focusing in today's class on what is mock epic or what is social satire or what is heroic couplet. So, without wasting much time, let us begin discussion by taking up the first topic for today, that is mock epic. Mock epic, also called mock heroic or heroic comic, is a long narrative poem written in mock heroic style intended to be humorous. Friends, when we talk about this concept of mock heroic or heroic comic or mock epic, we are basically talking about a kind of narration that is humorous in a way. More specifically, mock epic is a parody of the epic style or manner by treating a trivial subject seriously. So, what are we looking at in this subject? What are we, let's say, looking at in this idea that is very trivial but talking about a serious concept? The term mock epic, mock heroic or heroic comic are virtually interchangeable and are generally applied to literary works which involve either imitation and burlesque of the structure, attitudes and conventions of the true epic, or ridicule of subject matter by handling an elevated subject in a trivial manner, or treatment of low subject with epic dignity. Basically, all 3 points are focusing on a very trivial subject which is treated in a grand manner through the poet in this style of mock epic. Satire is a fundamental technique used in all mock epics. So, all of you know, friends, that satire is something which is ironical in tone, which is a comment and a form of metaphor used through literary techniques. Several literary devices such as irony, exaggeration, and sarcasm are extensively used to achieve the desired satiric effect. Although used synonymously, the terms mock heroic and mock epic exhibits slight difference. In essence, the former is a much broader term than the latter. Friends, when we talk about these terms like mock heroic or mock epic, we see that mock heroic is a broader term. Mock epic is not so broader, it has its limitations. To be specific, mock heroic refers to any work, either prose or poetry, treating a trivial subject in embellished formal language and elevated vocabulary. So, we can call, friends, mock heroic to any work which is dealing a trivial subject in a grand manner, in a formal language, elevated vocabulary, grand narrative, etc. Therefore, the term mock heroic is not merely tagged with mock epic. Rather, it is applied to any work composed in the aforesaid style and manner. In fine, mock heroic style is a ridiculed version of the traditional heroic style. So friends, when we talk about this mock heroic, we see that the epic convention, the traditional epic convention, is used in a mocking manner in this mock heroic style of writing. Let us now move to the next topic after mock epic, that is social satire. What is social satire and why Rape of the Lock is a social satire? As Shakespeare is the poet of men, Pope is the poet of society. The Rape of the Lock is a social document because it mirrors contemporary society and contains a social satire too. Pope paints about England in the 18th century. So, we see that this is a satire on the society. Pope satirizes the young girls and boys, aristocratic women and men, their free time activities, nature of husband and wives, the professional judges and politicians of the day. So, who is left behind? The complete society is covered in this social satire, Rape of the Lock. Pope clearly depicts the absurdities and the frivolities of the fashionable circle of the 18th century England. The world of Belinda, the world of fashion, is a trivial world. The whole life of Belinda is confined to sleeping, makeup, enjoyment, and alluring the lords. So friends, we can see that Belinda is a lady who is good for nothing but considered as heroine in this poem. There are no transcendental elements in her life. This life is marked by ill nature, affection, mischievousness, coquetry, yielding, and submissive nature, etc. Belinda represents all the fashion-struck women busy in such stupidities. Friends, we can see that Belinda is a lady who has nothing to do in her life except projecting herself in a beautiful manner in front of the men of her society. The gallants of the time have not been spared by Pope. Baron not only represents Peter but also typifies the aristocratic gallants of the age. Friends, when we talk about the men after women, we see that Baron is a person who represents, let's say, Peter, Lord Peter in the story. And these people are aristocratic gallants. But on the other hand, they are good for nothing, just like women of the age. Pope satirizes men's nature, that is always weak at beauty, in order to make his sharp satire sharper and all the more effective. Pope introduces the aerial machinery which facilitates the satire. So friends, all of you know that in an epic there are supernatural creatures. And in this story, we have aerial machinery or the sylphs or guardian angels who are protecting Belinda and women from men, because Pope has shown men always, let's say, behind the beautiful women in this poem. Through this weapon, the poet throws in contrast the weaknesses of the fashionable women of that age. All the women and beaus gather at the place where they exchange talks on trivial things. For example, visits, balls, films, motions, looks, eyes, etc. And at every word, a reputation dies. What does this mean? That when these people are talking to each other, their purpose is not to exchange ideas, but to humiliate other person, defame other person. These people are full of gossips, and with their every word, the reputation of one person in the society dies. Why? Because they always try to mock at others, humiliate others. Any person in the society, they leave no one. Here is a line from the poem, and I quote, "A beau and whittling perished in the throng, one dies in metaphor and one in song." So, we see here that the reputation of a person, any person in the society, dies in metaphor which they create, or when they sing a song, another person's reputation die. Men's favorite activity is to take suffered women to play with fun. Wives are also not virtuous at all. They love their lapdogs more than their husbands, and the death of husbands is not more shocking than the death of a lapdog or a breakage of a china vessel, which suggests that society was completely involved in projection rather than real human emotions. Friends, we had seen in the poem that wives are more concerned about their lapdogs or china vessel which they had brought from somewhere, an expensive, let's say, thing in their house. So, the husband and wife emotions are also mocked in this story. He satirizes the judges who make hasty decisions. So, friends, the Pope has not even left judiciary. The judiciary was also corrupt, and that is shown in the couplet which here comes. The hungry judges soon the sentence sign, and wretches hang that jurymen may dine. So, the judges not even think of giving death punishment to anyone in haste, because they have to attend a party. To sum up, the poem is a reflection of this artificial and hollow life, painted with a humorous and delicate satire. Pope's satire is intellectual and full of wit and epigram. What is epigram? Epigram is a short, witty saying. So, Pope is witty in his satires. He has left no stone unturned, and he has discussed all the major classes of the society, which has become artificial and hollow, and thus the British society became completely corrupt, and thus it is presented in a humorous and delicate satire in this poem, Rape of the Lock. Let us now move to the third subtopic which we are going to discuss in today's class, and it is heroic couplet. What is a heroic couplet? What does it suggest? What is its structure? We are going to discuss about all these things now. One of the Pope's best known poems, The Rape of the Lock, is a quintessential mock heroic on both the macro and micro level. Friends, when we talk about this poem is not only a social satire in a broader perspective of the society, but at the micro level also this poem is an excellent artistic piece. Because the language which Pope has used here, Pope has worked so hard to prove his craftsmanship in this poem, Rape of the Lock. The language is excellently produced, and it is tightly knit into the structure of heroic couplet. We are going to see how in the coming slides. Pope takes a minor transgression, the cutting of the young woman's hair by a suitor who wants a lock of her hair as a keepsake, and creates a narrative of epic proportions, completely with myth and magic. Pope mocks the heroic poem in two ways. So, friends, we can see what are those two ways through which Pope is mocking on this heroic poem. First, by elevating the trivial moment into a kind of grand tale, and second, by subverting formal elements, namely the heroic couplets. Friends, Pope has intentionally used heroic couplet in this poem, Rape of the Lock, because heroic couplet is the best form to write a mock epic, to satirize the follies and frivolities of the society. From the third canto, we get this oft-quoted couplets. Friends, the poem is divided into cantos. You can call them as parts also, but there was a fashion of dividing poem into cantos. It's a long poem, and here is a, let's say, example of heroic couplet from the third canto, and I quote the lines from the poem. Hear thou, great Anna, whom three realms obey, dost sometimes counsel take and sometimes tea. Friends, in this line, Anna is the Queen of England, and Pope is presenting Anna also with artificiality, suggesting that she is fond of taking tea, and between taking tea, she takes counsel or suggestions from her ministers, what to do and what not to do in different situations. Suggest that even Queen is not away from this projection of drinking tea and taking suggestions. This is in essence a heroic couplet, closed line, rhymed iambic pentameter, epic setting, but there is something symbolic happening in the second line as well. So, when we look at the structure of these two lines, we see that they are tightly knit, convey a complete message within two lines, and they are written in iambic pentameter, epic setting style. A grand way of expressing the drinking of tea and taking counsel is presented in these lines by Alexander Pope. Pope is juxtaposing the high language and voice of the epic poem with everyday occurrence. He sets up a moment that feels as if it belongs in the Roman or Greek mythology and then undercuts it with sometimes tea. So, when we read the line, we see that there is something serious going on. But at the end, when Pope uses the phrase sometimes tea, we understand that this is a satire on Queen Anne. So, Anna is always, let's say, drinking tea, and in between she talks about the, let's say, societal affairs. By using take to pivot between the high and low worlds, one can take counsel and one can take tea. Pope uses the convention of heroic couplet and bends them to his own comedic design. Friends, this is the, let's say, style of writing heroic couplet by Pope. He slowly reaches to the climax. Till we do not read the complete couplet, we are in suspense that what is Pope talking about, whether it is something serious, grand, or something funny. But as soon as we reaches to the last word of the couplet, we find that Pope has again beautifully used a satire. He had passed a comment on one of the, let's say, field of the society. With its driving rhythm, tight rhyme, and syntactical independence, It mirrors the subject matter. It portrays tales of adventure, war, magic, true love, and yes, even the stolen lock of hair. Friends, when we read this poem, Rape of the Lock, we consider it as a complete package. It has everything which exists in an epic. With the driving rhythm or tight rhyme or the syntactical independence which exists in this poem, Rape of the Lock, we find that this poem is a mirror of the aspects which it portrays. Whether it is tales of adventures, or whether it is a war, or it's a magic, or true love, all the aspects are beautifully covered and given equal weightage with the help of heroic couplets in this poem, Rape of the Lock. And of course, poet has designed the stolen lock of hair, a very simple and trivial incident, in a grand style. And he is able to do it with the help of the heroic couplet in this poem, Rape of the Lock. Friends, I had also shared one link with you. If you go to this link, you will find some extra information about this content, social satire or heroic couplet, and how Pope has used it in the poem with its, let's say, step-by-step analysis. I hope that you have now understood these three terms and how masterly Pope has used these terms in this poem, Rape of the Lock. That is all for today. Thank you for listening.